Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Brian Budzinski, Senior Managing Editor of Roads and Bridges Media. And on behalf of Roads and Bridges and our sponsor, StreetSmart, I'd like to welcome you to today's Infrastructure Insider Live Connect web event, part of an ongoing series of educational, professional development sessions. Today's presentation is how Colorado's longest-running smart highway work zone is saving lives. With over 80,000 vehicles per day, the stretch of I-25, located between Denver and Colorado Springs, is one of Colorado's busiest roads. In 2018, the Colorado Department of Transportation kicked off a $350 million three-year project to provide the first major improvements to this roadway since the 1950s. Project stakeholders identified early on that safety for motorists and workers would be the #1 priority on the project, and that using smart work zone technology and hardware would be a critical piece in accomplishing that goal. This roundtable discussion will consist of representatives from the Colorado DOT, prime contractor Kraemer North America, and StreetSmart, the project's smart work zone system integrator. We'll discuss why CDOT has placed such a strong emphasis on the use of smart work zones, detailed review of the Q warning, trucks entering highway travel time, alternate route, CCTV trailers, variable speed limit, and radar speed feedback systems used. Participants will receive an overview of smart work zones and how they can be tailored to each project to optimize safety. Understand that these systems are not a futuristic idea, but rather something that has been around for over 17 years with a steady trend of increased adoption across the U.S. and Canada. Understand the approximate cost of these systems and be given examples of how these systems are financed, and leave equipped with enough information to take back to their organization and be able to provide recommendations for economical smart work zone solutions that they can incorporate into their next project. We're going to get started in just a couple of minutes, but first, a little housekeeping. You will notice on your viewer that you have the ability to ask questions. We encourage you to ask questions, and we'll try to answer as many as we can at the end of the presentation based on time availability. Any questions we do not get to, we will answer offline. Also, viewers of this and all the Infrastructure Insider Series sessions will be able to earn 1 professional development hour credit per session. You will see the opportunity to do so at the conclusion of this presentation, so please make a note now to look for that certificate. Today's panelists include Paul Neiman, the Colorado Department of Transportation, Mike Blassie, Kraemer North America, Tim Jackson from StreetSmart, who will be sitting in for Chad Palmer, and StreetSmart's Brady Markell. Paul Neiman is a resident engineer at the Colorado Department of Transportation and project director for the I-25 South Gap project between Castle Rock and Monument. Previously, Paul was a project engineer on several of CDOT's key projects throughout the Denver metro area. Prior to his role in construction management, Paul spent 15 years with CDOT's Traffic Specialty Unit as a traffic engineer, designing and managing traffic plans for construction projects in the Denver metro area. Mike Blassie is the project manager for Kraemer North America, the prime contractor on the I-25 South Gap project. Mike has been in heavy civil and heavy highway construction for over 12 years. Tim Jackson is nationwide Smart Work Zone Operations Manager for StreetSmart. Tim has extensive experience designing and supporting the systems that are presently in use on the I-25 project. Brady Markell is the Director of Business Development for StreetSmart. Brady is passionate about educating traffic safety professionals about proven smart work zone solutions and the ease in which they can be incorporated into projects. I'll now turn the presentation over to Brady. It's all yours.
Thank you so much, Brian, and thank you for everyone for attending today. I want to thank Roads and Bridges for allowing us to put this great event together. We're really excited to share with you about the I-25 South Gap project and about smart work zones in general. So, quick couple things. We'll do a quick overview of the project itself, talk about some of the interesting and kind of defining features of this project, and then we'll spend the bulk of the discussion really getting into the various smart work zone components of the system. We're going to refer to this project as the GAP job, I-25 GAP project. So for those of you that have traveled the area south of Denver, this is most likely the road that you took. It is a part of Colorado that hasn't seen any major road construction to it since the early to mid 50s. So we included some fun pictures there from the Colorado DOT of what it looked like back in that time period. I want to just remember to give this reminder to everyone. Please ask your questions by putting them into the chat functionality. We will see all of the questions, and if we don't get to yours, we will make sure to contact you offline with the answers to your questions. And as Brian mentioned in the intro, we want this to be an educational session, and know that the information we're providing here is about systems that aren't some futuristic idea that only Colorado can have. These are systems that are on the roadway today, and we want to make sure that we're just educating as many people as possible about them, because they're not as hard or as expensive as you may think to get implemented, and the results speak for themselves, as you will learn as part of this discussion today. So I will have Mike Blasi with Kraemer kind of kick things off a little bit. And again, this format is going to be kind of a roundtable discussion. So between Mike and Paul and Tim, they will kind of give you some detailed answers on the various topics we're going to hit on today. So Mike, obviously this wasn't just kind of a normal mill and overlay type construction project. Do you want to maybe give the audience some of your kind of most favorite components of the project, and maybe some of the unique nuances that you and your team have had to kind of do as part of the construction process?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Brady, and thanks everyone for joining. And really want to start off with highlighting something that's unique about this project in terms of contract delivery. So this project is a CMGC project. For those that aren't familiar with that delivery style, somewhat like a design build. However, the owner, in this case, Colorado Department of Transportation, actually retains the designer early on and then selects the contractor, which in this case was Kraemer North America. What this allowed us to do is really get plugged in early on the design side of things. And I'll let Paul talk a little bit more about it, but we started talking about smart work zones, I think, in one of the first pre-con meetings we had. So this was a big focus for the project. Some of the other unique aspects really focused on wildlife safety, which I think we'll highlight in some of the further slides. And we split it up into multiple packages so that we could get going on construction while we were still designing some of the other phases of the project. So, Paul, you want to highlight kind of the project scope overall?
Sure. Yeah, sure. So, I wrote down this little bullet list of a couple things here. Really, like Brady already said in the beginning there, it's the last kind of section of I-25 that had not been improved between two of the largest cities in Colorado here, Colorado Springs and Denver. So that's the name of the gap. That's what we call this project gap. So really the big push on this project was, like anything, was safety first. We had 2 officers injured killed actually prior to this project. That was really a lot of what set off this project and started giving us the funding and looking to do this project here. So with that, we looked at this 18-mile stretch, and we determined we were going to need 800,000 tons of HMA to fix it. While we did that, we had 5 bridges we needed to replace in that area. We then, like Mike was saying, worked with Colorado Parks and Wildlife to they wanted originally 10 wildlife bridge structures built, and we got them down to 4 to fit within our project scope and our budget. So we're building 4 new wildlife bridges, and these are full 100-foot long span bridges. They're not just a culvert. We're adding 26 miles of wildlife fences with that to direct them into those areas there. We are improving drainage, of course, and some of the horizontal curve issues that we had here. We unique to this area, we've got this Monument Hill that's between us here, and it's got quite its own weather pattern and has presented us with quite a few challenges, plus the trucks that try and get over this hill have had many issues in the past since it was only a 2-lane facility. So we're adding a truck climbing lane that it's a southbound truck climbing lane. It brings you up to the top of Monument Hill and there's a way station right on the other side of the Monument Hill, top of Monument Hill. We're adding the chain-up station. We've had this kind of mock-up one in a rest stop area that our maintenance forces have used for the past few years. Now we're adding a real engineered chain-up station with lighting and everything. And the bigger thing, couple big things on this project, we're not adding GP lanes at all, but we did, as we went through the EA, we basically pulled out the express lanes were the way to go. We looked at a lot of those here in Colorado to manage lanes to help us with maintaining the road and just really for us to manage it and keep the traffic throughput. One of the biggest things we heard out of the EA was trip reliability. People just had no idea when they could get to Denver, get to the DIA, get from Colorado Springs back and forth. And the managed lanes and express lane really is what gives that trip reliability. So that was one of the big things, not super unique to this project, but important, and a lot of politics around express lanes here in Colorado. So that was a big thing. And then kind of final thing we did is upgrade a bunch of the fiber in this quarter as we were looking towards future autonomous vehicles. We were going to add in some infrastructure for that. That's kind of been put on hold, basically because we reorganized a little bit here at CDOT, but we do have the ability with upgrading all the fiber now for any type of future roadside design, roadside, what do they call those, scanners or devices to pick up some of the information that we need for some of the future autonomous type of things they've been talking about. So the other unique things about this project, there's really no good detours because I-25 is it. There's a couple state highways to the east and west, one actually on each side, that are really not ready for this 80,000 vehicle per day traffic that we have, annual daily traffic. So that was kind of a unique thing here. And then I talked about Monument Hill. That Monument Hill has been quite a issue for us. So those are kind of the high level scope of the project there. It's funny,
Awesome.
Brady, you showed that picture, Brady. You showed that picture there, that historic picture. But I was like, I didn't think that was historic. That looked like 3 years ago. That's exactly how the highway looked when we got here. It didn't look too historic to me, so, but that's it.
Yeah. And to kind of piggyback on what Mike was saying about the different phases of the project, I put this map back up here. Guys, keep me honest. You started up near Castle Rock, right?
Correct.
Yep.
First phase. Okay, so you can see the different colors there on the right. Those were the phases, right?
Yes, the blue, the kind of orange, yellow, and the southern part there where it says Woodmore, kind of those are the green. I guess that's green and orange in the middle. Yep.
Right. Yep. And construction had started on the very northern phase there before the design and maybe contract was even awarded for the southernmost phase. Is that right?
Yeah, let me say how that started with the CMGC process. We can take parts of this project, break it up. And so what we did do is we pulled the first northern part of this project, the first 6 miles, basically we broke it into 3 6-mile sections. And that northern 6 miles was the easy kind of low-hanging fruit. We had a deadline to start construction in 2018, September of 2018. That actually got pushed a year. It was going to be 2019. We started in 2018 due to some politics, things going on here in the state. So that was an easy section to start. And then we did a package 2, which was the southern 6 miles. We got that rolling. And like I said, the beauty of CMGC is we were able to get the first part out and continue designing, working towards getting the rest of the project out to construction. And then we picked up the third middle 6 miles about a year later, I believe, is when we finally started construction in that area.
Okay. Yeah, I thought that was a pretty unique way you did that. Great. And then these wildlife underpasses, again, for those of you not familiar with Colorado, obviously, herds of thousands of elk crossing I-25 is something they wanted to, discontinue, so to speak. So hence the reason for these, kind of intricate and very large wildlife underpasses. Have you guys gotten to see some of the fruits of your labor? Have you seen these underpasses in use yet?
I
have not, Mike.
No. Okay.
We've seen some tracks, so they're working. Yeah. I think part of it is CPW is also going to install some game cameras and then use that for kind of future research to just monitor how well they're working.
Right. Yeah, I forget the statistic, but the number of animal versus vehicle collisions on that stretch was very high prior to this project. And then the fence, you probably said it, is it 9 or 10 feet tall? This picture doesn't do it justice.
I think it's our standard, is it 10 foot? I think it's standard.
I think it's 10 foot, yeah, standard 10 foot game fence.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, thing, with that, and the big thing around that is both sides of our project, in the kind of the heart of the project there, are open space, and there's a wildlife refuge on the other side. So thus the reason for these animals here. There's quite a elk population here, animal population there. So
let's jump into the next kind of section, and then the first smart work zone system we'll start talking about are what we call trucks entering the highway system. So Mike, can you walk us through, one, kind of at its peak, how many construction workers, ballpark, from Kraemer, the subs, how many were out there at any given time when this thing was really at its peak?
Yeah, at our peak in the summer, we've got between 350 and 500 actual workers on site, including some of the field inspection staff and field engineering staff. So really, really busy summer last summer, and we're anticipating about the same this summer.
Okay. And one of the things that really impressed me, I had the opportunity to tour the project last spring, was the very high level of communication that Kraemer had with CDOT and all of your stakeholders, really. And I know stakeholders is kind of an overused term, corporate jargon nowadays, but walk us through kind of the level of communication, the different departments that really needed to work together to pull a project of this scale off, all while maintaining the flow of kind of normal traffic, 80,000 cars a day, traveling right next to those 350, 500 workers in that work zone.
Yeah, it's really daily coordination, communication, and as we talk about smart work zone and the actual devices, the devices by themselves are super helpful, but if we're not getting the message out to the right stakeholders, to use that term again, then we're not giving it the full capabilities that it has. So we identified pretty early on, and Paul can weigh in as well, but we have a specification that actually requires that we meet with some of the first responders, including fire, police, offices of emergency management, some of the operations centers, CDOT maintenance, obviously contractor personnel, and our own traffic control personnel. And I think the initial timeline for that was we were going to meet monthly, and then we were going to do a quarterly meeting. Well, we decided pretty early on, this is an impactful project, and we need to meet more than monthly. So every 2 weeks, we actually got together. You can see the on-site field offices. That middle trailer is our conference trailer. And pre-COVID, we would pack that thing with all the first responders. And on Thursday afternoons, we'd run through phasing, traffic switches, access. We'd talk about how we could assist them. And we were able to make some real-time changes just based on their input, get them up to speed on what was coming next, major traffic switches, major closures or impacts, and then get their input. It even led to creating some special detours that aren't accessible to the traveling public, but that first responders could utilize to make sure they always have access. So these on-site, and we've switched to Teams meetings to try and take advantage of some technology during COVID. We're still meeting every 2 weeks with these folks, getting their input, providing them real-time updates, and then making changes as we need to.
And Paul, were you, or I know there's several CDOT people in on those meetings. Got any comments on kind of what you got out of those?
Yeah, those meetings are invaluable. One of the best things we did on this project, and really that was kudos to Kraemer recognizing that early on, because like I said, we do have a spec that requires it monthly, but they became so valuable just to be able to coordinate with them. One, they just listening to, like I said, we have CSP, the Colorado State Patrol, police, we have the Office of Emergency Management there, we have our CDOT State Operations Center people in those meetings, we have maintenance, traffic control personnel, and the contractor. We're all in there talking, and they really have taught us how they have to operate, what Douglas County and El Paso in these areas practice is quick clearance, and they've really taught us how to assist them in that and how we can help clear the corridor because of the lack of detour routes and stuff. So with that, we've schooled them on the smart work zone devices and abilities that we have, the contractor has, what we can do to assist them in those things. And I mean, it's just a great compilation. We were able to, they were able to provide us radios that really improved, the radios that actually have Douglas County Dispatch, their frequencies on it, so we can talk to them. We coordinate with our operations center. They understand what we can do here with our kind of cameras, with some of the smart work zone devices, how we can size up situations for them and then lead them into areas. Just overall coordination of the whole project. I mean, this project last year, Mike, was that every 2 weeks we did a traffic switch, and it changed access up and down the corridor, and these guys need to know that. And so it really was helpful for them to know where they could get in if they had to oppose traffic to respond to an incident. Just even snow operations, coordinating with CDOT maintenance, just a world of benefits there, that communication there, just every 2 weeks talking to those guys, just getting to understand them, getting to understand the speed limits, changing that, all of those things, how they can, we can increase safety for everybody in this corridor has come out of those meetings. So really good thing on this project.
Yeah, and I'll add to that. You can imagine this is, an 18-mile long project, and to protect our crews and our work zones, we've lined the majority of it with barrier. At the peak, we had pretty much all 18 miles lined with concrete barrier. So we've implemented kind of a unique strategy. We've got emergency pull-offs where traveling public can pull over if they get, flat tire, stranded vehicle. We also use those for our access in and out of the work zone. And if you can imagine, next down 2 lanes heading through this project, we've actually opened that up to our first responders and communicated that. Paul kind of highlighted in these meetings, we tell them we call them EPOs, where the emergency pull-offs are at, and then they can use the work zone to kind of bypass traffic. Another kind of unique thing about this project that's really helped us is the implementation of an on-site tow truck, as well as a traffic control vehicle that they run in tandem. So we can actually help CSP and the first responders get things quickly cleared. And as Paul highlighted, that's all controlled here kind of on the project through our project operations center.
Yeah, Mike, let me add 2 more things too, because I saw there that the PI people that we have are in those meetings also, and that communication has been super valuable because they communicate daily with the first responders on anything we're doing, because obviously every 2 weeks we're doing a lot in 2 weeks and those types of things. So we've gotten quite a bit of props from all of our first responders about how well the PR and just our PR people reaching out to them every day, telling them what's up with the project, just even simple lane closure of a ramp, things like that. So really, and the other thing we do in those is we have after action reviews after we have an incident, and we go through it and learn from it. So we do that quite a bit too, which is, like I said, just good coordination between all of us, everybody involved, all the stakeholders in this project. So
nice, thanks guys. And the next slide kind of hits on that. You mentioned that there weren't any real good viable alternate routes to detour traffic around I-25, and it should be noted that work took place basically 24/7, construction work. So I know that there was a dedicated public relations team that's on board as part of this project, and I've worked with Caroline and the CIG team, and they've done a phenomenal job. But maybe just talk about that for a minute, Mike. What have been some of the benefits of having the PR team on board as part of this project?
Yeah, where do I even start? They truly make our lives a lot easier out here. And as I keep saying this, because we talked about Smart Work Zone, all these other kind of factors come into it. And using our public information team, we actually have text alerts that people can sign up for. You can see on the screen there, I think we've got close to 3,500 subscribers that we can actually push out real-time information, whether it's an unexpected closure due to an accident or whether it's a planned closure. It's going to be a little bit more impactful. We use that to get that message out, as well as the various social media platforms, including Facebook. We've got a hotline that's manned, and then we really go the extra mile with this public information team. CIG actually sends out, like Paul talked about, they send out specific emails to our first responders that are going to be impacted in any given area. So we're stretching 2 counties. We're stretching, through multiple different agencies, including CSP actually runs half of the project from their Colorado Springs group and the other half from their Douglas County group. So getting that information out to the right people, our public information team does a fantastic job. And it's really about getting that real-time info out. So whether it's the text alerts or using the smart VMBs that we can change on the fly, our PI team is involved in all of that. And it really helps traveling public get an idea of what to expect so they can make educated decisions.
Okay, cool. Just watching the clock here a little bit, we got to push ahead. We will save quite a bit of time at the end for questions, so please keep entering them into the chat there. And if we don't get to yours on this call, we will contact you offline and make sure you get your questions answered. So Paul and Mike, real quick, basically how and when did CDOT decide to use a smart work zone system, and which system was it that you started with? And I'll let Paul start, please.
So I had a project in the mountain corridor here in Colorado that I was looking for some additional type of traffic control devices to use, and this CDOT headquarters does a lot of research, had been in talks about a lot of the smart work zone devices. So from that point on, early in pre-construction, I was convinced already to try and use it for this project. This is a major project for CDOT, a lot of political things around it. I wanted to make sure we had every available resource and all the latest tech we could to, one, for the safety of us, the public, and just, for the comments and the just some of the politics going around the project as to how we're going to maintain traffic, and this is going to be a nightmare, those types of things that were coming in early in our early, as we started putting out that this project was coming to light. So this smart work zone was just the next level for me. I wanted to include whatever we could to make sure we could take advantage of it. So really most of it.
Okay. And Mike, I believe phase one, a lot of that involved some heavy hauling from your fleet of trucks, right? Can you talk about the benefits of these truck entry systems?
Yeah, absolutely. We were relatively new to smart work zones before this project, but immediately saw the benefit just on paper from using a truck centering system. And I'll give an example. Everyone passes, the millions of orange signs that they see that are static, and maybe people get a little bit, I guess, bored of seeing that, and there's a little bit of they stop paying attention. And it's unfortunate because there's a lot of good information on those signs. So I'm going to steal this from Paul, but this was a way to keep it fresh and really let people know when there truly was an impact happening. So the truck's entering system is only triggered when we actually have a vehicle pass the sensor. So it's not something that's messaging all the time that people are going to stop ignoring, kind of a boy cried wolf thing. It's something that's real time. And when people see that VMB light up, they know something's actually happening. So we identified this early on as we are going to have, I think we calculated at one point, 15 to 50, somewhere in that range, trucks coming in and out of the median on a heavy haul day. And so we identified this system as kind of the first, wow, this could really benefit us and keep that message active.
Yep.
And when Mike says DMB, he means digital message board, or PCMS, those portable changeable message sign. The picture on this slide kind of shows what was used on this project. This previous slide with the static sign with the flashers above it, that's another option to use for a truck entry system. Tim, I'll pull you into the mix here. I know you were help deploy these trailers and kind of design the system, the logic that gets used for these. Any things as it relates to the South Gap job on the truck entry system?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was all touched on the advantages. I think the one thing I'll reiterate on these is the line of communication for this type of system is considered point to point. So it's just about an instantaneous line of communication to send that message and say there are trucks entering ahead, prepare to stop, slow down, etc. I think at one point on this early on, as indicated, I think we had about 8 systems out there simultaneously for each entry location. So yeah, there was definitely some nuances, and we had to get creative to accommodate the entry point, but that's definitely the nature of these types of systems.
Yep. Nice. Okay. Keep moving on here. The next item is around queue warning systems. So obviously, you know, the concept here is to place sensors within the work zone. In this case, most of the permanent mount sensors were ripped down as part of the construction activity, which is very common when any sort of construction like this is happening. So I understand there were sensors mounted on trailers within kind of the ditch areas that then communicate to the message boards prior to that work zone. Paul, you want to kind of say anything about these queue warning systems and maybe some of the benefits that CDOT has seen as a result of using these on the gap job here?
Well, you know, I mean, it's hard to say. We had some of these in our area already. I mean, these were kind of invaluable. Just the amount of traffic here really is what dictates this, that, you know, these are a little hard to use a little bit because you've got to place them in the right spots, but really the whole messaging behind all this and the big picture for me really with all of this smart work zone stuff was trying to get real-time information to the driver right then and there. You know, all of these systems we picked were, for me, based around that, you know, trying to get this real-time information and give them better choices and better decisions they can make, whether coming through the gap or if they're stuck in the project there. So I don't know if I have any other comments, like the queue warning system, because we used that for a while. I don't think we have that out here anymore, right? We had that out here for a little bit. And yeah, because we used the travel time stuff with that, I think, in accordance with that too, I believe. So
right. Yep. You know. And that's an interesting feature you bring up, and it's a question I have later on, but I'll ask it now. Is basically, you said I don't think we have any out here now. Talk about that a little bit. How did the kind of smart work zone applications change as the project progresses, Paul?
Well, you know, like I said, originally when in pre-construction, we looked at kind of 4 of these systems, right? And the PVSLs were a big part of that, the portable variable speed limit signs, the cameras, truck entering system, and then this queue warning system. And we kind of have morphed, right? That was the beauty of it, and beauty of this system is we didn't know all the system we needed out here. And as we started getting into the project, we could see some of the various things that we thought were more successful, and we started changing those things up. And to me, like I said, that was a huge benefit in some of this, and how quickly we could change these up to kind of meet and apply it to our situation here, because you're kind of guessing at first. You're just throwing these things in here to figure out what you need, and then, like I said, you can see what gets used, because you start seeing, you know, the capability of these smart work zone devices is there's also the data coming back, which I know you're going to talk about later, but the data is helpful to make some of those decisions too, and seeing some of that in more realistic real time, like I said. So, yeah.
I think too the other piece, just to jump in, the other piece is got to figure we're 18 miles, all kind of in different phases of construction. That flexibility and adaptability has been huge for us, because there was a time where the pavement started getting wider, you know, things became a little bit more open in the northern section, and we didn't have the need for the trucks entering system. So we were able to repurpose some of those. I think we do still have one of the queue warnings in place, just strategically placed in an area where in rush hour, there's slowdowns for whatever reason. And we can alert the traveling public that traffic is slowing down or stopping ahead. So that flexibility and kind of adaptability of these systems, a smart VMD can be repurposed for other uses, right? And that's one of the things Street Smart has been fantastic with, is just kind of bobbing and weaving with us.
Yep. Just to be clear, these boards, when, you know, there isn't queuing up ahead, that they just are blank, or, you know, it says drive with care or something like that. And then once the sensors in the work zone detect slow or stop traffic, it's providing that applicable message on the sign. Jim, anything to add? I know these guys say that, you know, we can move them at moment's notice, and that probably gives you heartburn, because ultimately you and your team is on the hook for a lot of that. But, you know, anything to add?
Yeah, the one thing I will touch on in regards to this project in particular is, you know, as it's been mentioned, this is an 18-mile long project. So there was instances where, you know, in a typical lane closure, it makes sense to put your Q warning system at that congestion point, right? But there's definitely been times in this project where, in the nature of the phasing, we've sort of had the Q warning system within the work zone limits, which has provided, sort of advisory conditions up ahead throughout, because, sometimes there's a traffic shift or some other cause for slight congestion or concern. So it was kind of uniquely placed in this application compared to a standard, lane closure or multi-lane closure where all of your hardware is right at the approach. So definitely dynamic in the layout in that aspect as well, just given the length of the project.
Right. Thanks, Tim. The next topic, variable speed limit systems. So you can see here a couple different trailers. The one is just a variable speed limit sign, and then the next one actually incorporates radar speed feedback right into the same trailer. These are very large trailers. I think from the ground to the top of that solar panel there, it's probably close to 14 feet. So they it's a commanding presence on the roadway. Mike, I'll start with you. When I was out there, I want to say that all the permanent speed limit signs within this zone were taken down, and you were only using these types of trailers. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. For at least through last summer, we had only variable speed limit systems in place. Since we've gotten substantial completion on the north 6 miles, we didn't want to artificially keep that speed limit lower than it needed to be. So we've got the permanent signs up, but then these PVSLs have actually shifted south into the project where we're still in active construction.
Yep. Paul, do you maybe want to hit on these signs and who determines when the speed gets changed and how does it get changed?
Yeah, so at our height, we had 30 of these in here. We had 22 of these ones without the speed radar feedback, and then we added 8 more. And through the biweeklies, we added red and blue flashing lights on these, just kind of coordinating with CSP, and just felt that we could use that in this zone due to some of the high speeds that they were seeing. And that was some of the things that come out of those biweeklies. What we did with these speed limits is we have a form, our 568 speed reduction form. We went through and kind of modified it to have adjustments so we could run the zone at 60 miles an hour, and we would go as low as 45 miles an hour. That would be the project people, us on the project for basic lane closures, just any type of things we were doing, we could drop it as low as 45. CSP and maintenance, again, through biweeklies, we've, told them they can do this too. They call us. We operate it here out of our office here, but it operates out of a laptop, JamLogic software that StreetSmart has provided. It's cloud-based. You can run it from home. So our guys have been doing it from home with COVID here. But basically, we have time of day settings on this now. We kind of the first year, I think we just used it 60, and then we went 55 or 45 based on various different conditions, and that was based on what the project was seeing, what the need was, nighttime operations, lane closures, things like that. Then we went to now we actually have these programmed for time of day based on volumes that have picked up here, so it kind of changes it to 55 when there's peak volumes, and then goes back to 60 right now is how we have that. So we can adjust it. If we see a need, if we see a safety issue, anything, and so can CSP or CDOT maintenance can call us and we'll adjust it for them. And we also have our permanent Colorado operations centers that also have the JamLogic software. Then they can adjust it if we're not around, if we're off duty or someone's not here in our operations center. So it's been pretty versatile. This system here has been pretty successful for this project. A lot of different things have come out of these portable variables here, and as far as CDOT's been looking at doing this on other areas too, so,
Yep. I should note that the variable speed limit trailer with the radar feedback was actually the first of its kind ever used, and we worked with Vermac, the manufacturer, to put that device together, and it's pretty rewarding being out in that work zone, particularly at night, and when cars fly by these signs to see the brake lights. And that's exactly what they're for. So kudos to, everybody involved in getting that. I know some people say, well, we can't do the blue and the red strobes in our state. And it's kind of like, I can appreciate that, but, at the end of the day, it's about safety. And, here is pictured the CDOT uses aerial patrols. And I know within the work zone, they would use these devices and they would get the GPS coordinates of these trailers so that if someone were to get a ticket, these are enforceable. And they say, no, on this particular date, this was the GPS location of the sign, and they're issuing tickets off of these devices. So,
Brady,
anything in these trailers?
I would like to echo the uniqueness on this project, that it's a group effort to take the current conditions and adapt that speed to the current conditions. We see these in other states where it might be run on a schedule for working hours, or there's the option to send it scheduled or change it remotely or do whatever. But it's a very have to go through a pretty big approval process, right? Or hit the right ears before it's changed. So this is definitely a very dynamic initiative on this project.
Right. Okay, the next thing, and Paul, you hit on the camera trailers earlier. So kind of like the sensors within the zone, most major roadways today across America have eyes in the sky, so to speak. So talk about these trailers, the benefits they've provided from a traffic management perspective, and then Mike, if you want to hit on it, from Kraemer's point of view. So I'll let Paul go first.
Yeah, so these things are, of course, valuable. This corridor happened to have 10 or 11 CDOT permanent installed cameras. We supplemented we put 3 of these portable ones in to kind of put in areas where we were kind of blind at. And the benefit of this, we found out recently, because CDOT went through an overhaul and some change in software, we lost access to our CDOT permanent cameras. So right away, we ordered up some extra of these. And these, like I said, are just these eyes in the sky. Like this is, our operators are able to size up a situation and able to direct in some of the first responders as they have straight radio contact with them, or they'll call them directly knowing that we're here. And I mean, these are just invaluable, really. We've been able to do progressive shots on bridges out of these cameras, and just, I mean, like I said, you can stick them anywhere. They're just one of the other best things we have out here. I think that's given us, I mean, just it's paid itself back in miles here. So,
right,
Mike,
and the screens there on the right, I believe, were taken from the job site trailer, right? So that's real-time feed from those cameras. Okay.
Yep. Yeah, these cameras are super helpful. We're able to respond with the on-site tow truck. Sometimes operators will pick up, I should say most times the operators will pick up on a stalled vehicle, an accident, even a pothole that's potentially causing flat tires before we'd get notification from anyone else. And so we can get there that much quicker, get it fixed that much quicker. And if we're hauling that day, if we've got haul trucks going, I mean, the tail end of that is we've got less vehicles sitting in traffic trying to get to the work. So these have been extremely helpful.
Yeah, we use that as a metric, our incident response time. Our operators mark that down, and we try and stay under 30 minutes response. So that's a good point. That has helped us big time with that. And like I said, those guys can zero in the tow trucks before even CSP or first responders even hear about it. Sometimes we're on scene just because the operators are here in our office and they're dedicated to this 18 miles, not the entire state like our operations center for the state is. So.
All right, cool. Tim, anything to add on the cameras at all?
Nope, I can just echo that the operators are doing a great job, because if there's anything going on or anything, we find out within minutes that we need to look into it. So it's been definitely beneficial and definitely a key tool that we have to keep up and running at all times.
And is it the people in this room that have access to the JamLogic software and they can override messages on the message boards if needed? Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, this is one of them. So this is our project operations center, but we've also given Golden has a ability to use the JamLogic software that controls everything. Yep. And they can use they can control the smart work zone. But what you see on those screens there is actually our state cameras there, and it's a little bit of an older picture because now those screens have all Street Smart cameras on them and run through the jam logic server, so we can control it, do whatever we want. So yeah.
Nice. Okay. Good. Okay, let's wrap this up in about 5 minutes, and then we'll take some questions at the end. So everybody is always, interested in data. Basically, show me some data. And obviously, with all the sensors that are in the work zone, it's collecting vehicle counts and average speeds, and you could even classify vehicles if you want. But Paul, do you want to talk about how the data collection that's involved in this has made the project more efficient, and maybe how that has been used to dictate construction schedules at all, or anything on the data collection piece, please?
Yeah. The biggest thing with that is on the variable speed limit signs, right? We're able to track when we change those speed limits, and then we're able, through the sensors on the portable devices, we're able to see if we're getting conformance to what we set it at. And that's kind of nice because you can also see when we lag and we hold the speed limits kind of too long, where there's been a weather event or just something that, we may not have returned the speed limits back to the original speed limits. And we have the data because the NVDRs that are on these can show us what the speeds are, and we can see them creep up. So that's kind of beneficial to us, knowing that, we actually get conformance when we use these things. We've seen it, there's always the stragglers, but we get overall majority of conformance with that. And then we use it just to kind of verify some of the other systems. The data helps us really, when there's an incident, we can go back and forth with the data to see and monitor and kind of check, make sure the devices are all working. That if we know we had an accident today, we should see the Q warning systems turning on. We should see the speed limits drop. We should see these types of things, kind of gives you this overall check on other things. Plus some predictability. We can get better data that we know last week volumes we can see were this, and we can see some volume data out of it too to kind of predict if we can do lane closure next week. I mean, we have our state system that we kind of predict volumes for the year and peak periods and things like that, but it's kind of allowed us to do just quite a few things there on that data side. Just like I said, it's been nice to see that availability out of the system. Sure. You don't get that out of static signs.
Yep. Obviously the data that's collected from these devices is kind of what makes these systems smart. And we can set up logic, kind of like if-then statements. If speed equals X, then display Y on the message board. Mike and Tim, anything to add on the data collection piece of the Smart Work Zone here?
I'll just reiterate that we do have quite a few of our microwave side fire sensors out there that are moving with the project, and that's collecting 1 minute intervals in real time of per lane class count volume, and I know that CDOT and their team is integrating that and using that for future studies and what's impacting and making judgment calls on the project. So we're doing that on the temporary platform. And yeah, we're then also utilizing all the speed to run our automation for Q warning, travel time, etc. So it's a big component to the ITS system.
Mike, once COVID hit a little over a year ago now, it's hard to believe, I think I heard that you were able to maybe expedite or change the construction schedule a little bit just based on the decrease in traffic volumes, and some of that was validated, I think, through some of this data collection. Can you speak to that maybe a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So I wouldn't say it necessarily gave us, an expedited schedule, but it did allow us to get a little bit more creative based on the data we were seeing to maybe start lane closures a little bit earlier, take advantage of the best weather during the day, and really make the most of having less vehicles on the road. So obviously the whole COVID situation has been impactful for everyone. And because of this system, we were able to just kind of look at the data and make sure, hey, if we get out there an hour early for a lane closure, what is it going to look like, and help us make those good decisions.
Did we lose you, Brady?
I'm talking on mute. There we go. Let's go into a little bit of a lightning round here. I got maybe 4 or 5 final questions here. Reminder for people to type their questions into the chat box there, and we'll save a few minutes at the end, and we want to get to all those. So, Mike, we'll start with you on this one. So I had somebody ask me this a couple weeks ago. Is it MOT or smart work zones, or can we do both?
It's definitely both. It's definitely both. And I think the proof's in the pudding here on the GAP project. We do have a full service traffic control company that is out setting closures, maintaining cones, barrels, signs. We cannot shy away from that. I don't think we can live without that. These systems really supplement that and are a little bit more mobile because we're not stealing a VMB, a variable message board, or a static sign from somewhere it needs to be to message something to the traveling public. We're sprinkling in these systems where they actually make sense to really supplement and continue getting the message across to the traveling public on what they're going to encounter.
All right, thank you. Paul, if a DOT or a contractor, saw some of this information and they want to do a truck entry system or a queue warning system, how hard is it to get started, and what does that look like?
I think it's easy. I think like Mike was saying, it's kind of supplement to whatever you thought you were going to do with standard traffic control devices. These types of systems can be worked in fairly easily to give you a much better traffic control, much better data to the public. So it's easy. I don't think it's hard at all. Street Smart made it easy for sure. So.
Okay. Next question. Thank you, Paul. And I'll use Tim on this one. Tim, how do smart work zones basically get called out on a project? And what are some of the ways you see them get basically paid for? Everybody wants to know, how do I get these things paid for?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, so in most applications, we'll see it as a, biddable line item on a typical highway project, bridge project, anything that's going on. And it's just kind of, an additional line item similar to what the traffic control is being bid on. The source of that funding is different in many applications, but that's kind of the standard where they're already rolled out in a state. We've also seen other situations where there's, force account, safety funding, some other options where, there's an allotted amount of money to get something on a road, in conjunction with that MOT plan, to get real-time information to drivers. And that's where we can come in, or a traffic control company can come in with an integrator, manufacturer, et cetera, and provide that additional layer of information to the traveling public.
Nice. Let's go to the next one, and I see some questions rolling in here from the audience, so thank you. Keep those coming. Okay. Paul, you and I talked a little bit about this yesterday. The project here, somewhere around $400 million overall. Obviously, this is a whale of a project. Talk a little bit about maybe how much money ballpark was allocated for MOT on this, and then of that, how much was the smart work zone approximately?
Yeah, so on this project, roughly about $350 million will be our construction dollars when we're all said and done of what work we get out here and stuff. And of that, we're probably about $35 million of that is for all of our traffic control devices. That includes just drums, cones, signs, the standard stuff, courtesy patrol that we have, which is our tow trucks. We have 2 of them out here. So we're about 35 into it, and in that 35 million, there's about $1 million. We're hitting just a little over $1 million now, but I had planned $1 million, I think 1.2, 1.3 million, somewhere in that range, to dedicate to a smart work zone system for this project. So really, for us, kind of a drop in the bucket on the $35 million that we have, our 10% of really what we spent on all of our projects here at CDOT, so really good value for us on this. So.
Yeah, I think the statistic we see nationwide in terms of how much does a smart work zone cost, it ends up being like a fraction of a percent, so anywhere from maybe 0.5% to 1% of the overall construction project budget. And Tim, maybe if you would hit on, what does a smart work zone look like on a bridge replacement out in rural Missouri? How many devices do we see on like a smaller,
I think that,
more?
Yeah, I think that's kind of what I've been doing, as I'm trying to get into this and have tried to get into this project, just trying to make this technology accessible for all projects. And I can see, easily putting a couple of these devices. You do not need the complexity that we did. And there's quite a few other little things we did on this project you didn't mention that is in that $1 million, with some of the VMBs just at the outskirts of the project, just giving information. Hey, project ahead, road construction ahead, messages we can change every day besides the PVSLs and the other things like that. So to me, I could see that as a minimum on any project, just to be able to deliver some real-time information. If you're laid off the road, you could instantly message that you're laid off the road to people and let them make alternative, decisions as to where to go. So I could see this technology, which is kind of was my goal when I got into this, figuring out how we can get this into every project and make it viable on all projects, because it really is. It's not that complex. You don't need a full operations center. The operations center we built is very little cost, really. It's a computer and 8 TV screens. It's simple.
Yeah.
That's not the hard part. So the devices is where it's at, and like I said, there's some simple things you can go all over the place with it. So I can see easily applying to any type of project. Just at least a single element of it will give you some enhancements.
Sure. Okay. Thank you for that. We talked about data collection a little bit. I know somebody just asked, we're able to feed the data to CDOT and CTMC. Obviously, we talked about that a little bit. Yes, we can feed all the data anywhere you need it to go. Has the system worked, and how do you know? Talk about the safety within this work zone that you've experienced in the last 2 to 3 years, and I'll start with Mike in terms of the vehicles and the contractors.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say, just looking at the evidence, and I have the benefit of living on the south end of this project and driving the entire 18 miles every day. I see driver behavior change based on what they're seeing on those devices. I've had people call me and say, wow, I'm looking at these VMBs. I didn't realize they change every day, and now I'm looking at them. And then you can see, especially when we first implemented the PVSLs, the portable speed limits signs, people were reacting to that flashing speed. It's showing that you should be going 60, their speed's flashing 73. They're reacting to that. They're slowing down. You mix that in with some CSP enforcement, which CDOT and CSP have partnered on this, and all of a sudden we're really in the business of trying to change driver behavior, which is something I don't know if we can do with just static signs. So all these systems, all these tools, all these meetings that we've talked about in this webinar really go into that. And I think just watching the driver behavior, that's how we know it works.
All right. Nice. Paul, I know you have some hard statistics in terms of, maybe average number of fatalities within this work zone versus you've seen during the active project.
Yeah, so prior to the project getting here, we had about 14 fatalities in a 3-year period. And since we've been here, we've had 6 fatalities overall in the corridor. 3 of them were medical conditions, a suicide, so not related to construction at all. And the other 3 were drivers just doing 100 miles an hour and hit barrier. Right. One tried to do a Dukes of Hazzard. So we've seen some really good, as far as that goes, the severity of incidents of accidents and things like that has dropped, because if you want to attribute those 3, we've had 3 in 3 years that we've been out here in the project here. So to me, it's done, it's been a safer work zone. It's been safer than when it was prior to the project getting here. We still have types of rear end incidents and things like that, but the severity of the incidents, we'll take those rear end type incidents any day over fatalities and injury type accidents. So it's been good.
That's awesome. That makes it worth getting out of bed every morning hearing that result. That's really cool. Some questions coming in. So Tim, I'm going to call on you on this one. So the question is, with some recent advancements in like probe data and INRIX and things like that, how does that using those devices maybe compare to these traditional sensors that we've been talking about today?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so that's definitely present on the marketplace from what we're seeing. It's I don't want to even say commonly used, but it's often used in regards to Smart Work Zone for supplementing a travel time system where you can reduce kind of the cost and the need for specific sensors on the road. With where a lot of the specifications are that we're seeing nationwide, we still will utilize traffic sensors to provide a real-time data source just for that reliability, and oftentimes we're obligated to provide a data source, a data set, 60-second intervals of average speed
Sure.
data binning. So they're definitely on the marketplace for travel time, but typically when it comes to other system applications, we'll use sensors for that real-time data.
Okay. I'll stick with you, Tim. Another question here. Please keep them coming in that chat box. We'll wrap up here in a few minutes. Talk about the output of the data. Is that in a common code nowadays so it can get pushed anywhere? How has that been changing over the years?
Yeah, so right now, as was mentioned earlier, our system is hosted in JamLogic, which is a fleet and Smart Work Zone management software. That software will export it as an XML feed to any group that's, any constituents and parties that are involved in the project that would like to accept that feed. They are currently part of the format for the Smart Work Zone data exchange, and they're compliant there as that's developing and rolling out. We have made adaptations on this project in particular for some other specified feed requirements, but that's kind of the norm and where we're heading as an industry is to be compliant with the Work Zone data exchange.
Okay. Paul or Mike, there's a question here about the emergency pull-offs. How frequently do you space those, and how do you determine where do they get spaced?
Yeah, I can jump in, Paul. We actually have a CDOT standard specification or standard plan that requires that if we've got 2-foot shoulders for more than 1 mile on each side, that we open up some sort of emergency pullout. So as I talked about earlier, we've actually combined those with an access point into our work zone. So made them a little bit longer, a little bit more trucker friendly, and they can serve both of those purposes.
Okay. And then Erin from Wisconsin, she had a question on law enforcement within the work zone. I know that's obviously a common practice around the nation. Do you have dedicated officers within the work zone, kind of dedicated to the construction project? And if so, was there a separate contract with the law enforcement agency that you had to pay for their services?
I can answer that as Paul here. So yeah, both, right? We have Colorado State Patrol. We have on a contract that the project, and we pay for that additional enforcement. And then we also utilize, uniform traffic control in lane closures and things like that. So we have both. Both of those were within our $35 million that I mentioned as our traffic budget. So those are all included in that.
But as far as like a state patrol officer parked with its lights on at the beginning of the work zone, during the overnight hours, that isn't happening on this job, is it?
We utilize the white vehicles, the unmarked kind of car with the red and blue lights. We utilize those UTCs, what we call uniform traffic control. We do have those when we have lane closures. Part of our policy at CDOT, we always use those guys at night. CSP, we utilize for enforcement. They actually drive the corridor and enforce. The UTCs do not. They sit in lane closures. So,
Understood. Okay. A couple more. Tim, why don't you take this one? What do the message boards display on them when there's not a queue or traffic is in free flow?
Yeah, so very often in these systems, it's typical to say, road work, X amount of miles ahead, or, drive safely. There's usually a default message. The way we're trending in a lot of projects lately are we'll put, sort of a 4 corners or advisory sign up, so it's very minimal. So when it does activate and it is saying stop or slow traffic ahead or providing information, it will be more meaningful. And I think we touched on that earlier, the advantage of that drivers are noticing. There's also times where it'll be a lead-in message board or a few lead-in message boards where we'll also be providing a travel time. So it'll say, through the work zone is X minutes, or, X minute delay because of the work zone. So there's definitely a few different opportunities there to provide that information to the traveling public.
Sure. All right. One of the questions, are there classes or training on how to design a smart work zone? That would be something, reach out to any of us on this call. We can walk you through that. Obviously, this is a pretty hot topic amongst DOTs and amongst traffic engineering consulting firms. So we want to be a resource, and I really mean that. We're going to give you our lessons learned and our best practices, so you're not starting from scratch if you want to do these systems. So please feel free to reach out for that. Paul, future plans for smart work zones within the state of Colorado on the next, 3, 6, 12 months. What is that looking like?
Well, we have a couple other major projects, as all states do, coming up, and I'm pushing to use as much of the smart work zone systems as we can on those projects, because I did 15 years of traffic design, and I see the value in these devices here. Just the big goal for me is PI and all those things are great, but this instant, real-time information back to the public is where it's at, I think, in my opinion, just being out on site there trying to deliver something immediately to the motorists so they know what's going on. So we do have, I believe, other plans for it. I'm not in charge of all those other projects, but if I have my say, and I usually do, put my word out there that I recommend those on most of our, especially our major projects. So I'm hoping we incorporate them more.
Sure. Mike, the acronym CGCG at the very beginning of the project here, what did that stand for? Somebody had a question, like the design build.
Yeah, it's a CMGC, Construction Manager General Contractor, and it's a kind of an alternative delivery contracting style. I likened it to design build, right? But in this case, the owner actually retains the designer early on in the process. I think gets the design plans up to about 30%, and then CDOT selects a contractor based on a number of factors, and price is one of those. So we've actually seen significant cost savings as a result of CMGC. And it really just allows the contractor to get integrated with the design team and the owner early and really kind of work through the phasing, any funding challenges that might exist, phase the project, and get under construction a lot quicker.
Right. Okay. Last question came in around, and this might be for Tim, the value in basically tagging the location of these traffic safety devices for litigation purposes. Is that something you're able to kind of go back on and see, this trailer, where was it on that particular day?
Yeah. So the devices are, the coordinates are compiled within the software, and it's timestamped, so we're able to, provide an accurate GPS location. Everything's connected through cellular modems, so it's centrally located. Yeah, so that is a possibility. I can't say that it's an issue often by any means, or something that arises quite often, ever.
Right. Okay. Well, this has been awesome. If you have other questions, put them in the chat quickly. Those will all get logged, and we will be able to see those after the fact, and we'll email you and get in touch with you or call you with answers. Tim, Mike, Paul, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to educate all of us on this awesome job out in Colorado. Again, thank you to the Roads and Bridges team for having us today. Hopefully everybody on this session learned a thing or two that they can take back to their own projects and incorporate. And I meant what I said in that, these devices are these systems are increasingly called out in specifications. And if you need best practices on specification examples or any questions, please feel free to reach out to StreetSmart. We can guide you in the right direction, put you in touch with people like Paul and Mike from a general contractor and DOT perspective. I just think the more all of us talk to each other around the nation, the safer we're going to make our roadways. So with that, thank you so much and have a great afternoon, everyone.
Great. Thanks very much, Brady. That was a terrific presentation, and my thanks to all of our panelists. On behalf of Roads and Bridges Media, I'd like to thank all of our participants and ask that you stay tuned for additional sessions in our Infrastructure Insider series. This webinar will soon be archived at the same URL that you used today, available on demand, as well as at www.roadsbridges.com. So until next time, stay safe and be well. So long.